The passing of Val Kilmer at the age of 65 didn't just make headlines. It cracked something deeper in the hearts of his fans and peers. This wasn't just another celebrity obituary that fades with the news cycle. This was the loss of a true artistic soul, someone who carved out his legacy not by playing it safe, but by diving headfirst into roles with an intensity few could match. And yet, as the tributes rolled in, so did old shadows. Decades-old rumors resurfaced, the whispers that Kilmer was difficult, hard to work with, or worse, a diva. But this time, something changed. Instead of letting those misconceptions go unchallenged, people who actually knew Kilmer stepped forward to tell a different story. One of the most heartfelt came from actor Danny Trejo, who worked alongside Kilmer and considered him a friend. Trejo's voice carried weight, not just because of his reputation in the industry, but because of the sincerity behind every word he said. He wasn't speaking out of obligation. He was speaking out of love and frustration. Love for the man he admired, and frustration at how misunderstood that man had been. He wanted fans to understand that Val Kilmer was not what the headlines made him out to be. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't temperamental. He was a perfectionist, someone who cared so deeply about the art that it sometimes clashed with an industry that often values speed over substance. Trejo's defense wasn't just a casual statement. It was a direct challenge to the narrative that had unfairly followed Kilmer for years. In setting the record straight, Trejo wasn't just protecting a friend's reputation. He was protecting the truth. And that truth is powerful. Val Kilmer was one of the most committed, passionate, and misunderstood actors of his generation, and his legacy deserves more than secondhand gossip. It deserves respect. It deserves clarity. And thanks to Trejo, it's finally getting both. Danny Trejo didn't just dismiss the diva label that's haunted Val Kilmer for years. He obliterated it. And in doing so, he addressed something much deeper than just gossip. Hollywood has a long history of slapping the difficult label on actors who don't conform to the status quo. It's a lazy, damaging shorthand often used to simplify complex personalities or passionate professionals. But Trejo made it absolutely clear that label doesn't apply to Val Kilmer. Not even close. In his words, the talk about Kilmer being a diva was a total crock. It wasn't just that the rumors were wrong, they were flat out ridiculous. According to Trejo, Kilmer wasn't throwing tantrums or storming off sets. He wasn't arguing for power or status. He was simply standing up for the integrity of the work. That's it. What Hollywood sometimes frames as difficult is, in truth, the resistance of someone who refuses to settle for mediocrity. Kilmer wasn't there to make friends or flatter egos. He was there to embody the truth of a character. And if that meant clashing with people who weren't as invested, so be it. Trejo's frustration is palpable, and rightfully so. It's heartbreaking to think that an actor who gave everything to his performances, who sacrificed his voice, his health, his comfort, would still have to fight against cheap narratives that reduce him to a stereotype. Trejo's first-hand experience flips that narrative completely. He didn't see a diva on set. He saw a craftsman, a serious, dedicated actor who didn't care about shortcuts, who wasn't there for vanity or applause, but because he loved the craft. In a business where many just want to get it done, Kilmer wanted to get it right. That's not diva behavior. That's discipline. That's devotion. That's the kind of fire that only true artists carry. And Trejo, a man who's worked with legends and seen it all, knew the difference. His defense wasn't soft or sugar-coated. It was bold. It was clear. And it made one thing undeniable. Val Kilmer was never the problem. He was the one trying to solve them, for the sake of the art. Val Kilmer wasn't chasing clout. He wasn't addicted to fame. And he certainly wasn't trying to dominate a set out of ego. What he was, according to Danny Trejo, was a man consumed by one singular force, the relentless pursuit of perfection. That word, perfectionist, keeps coming up in Trejo's tribute, and for good reason. Kilmer approached every role like it was his last. He didn't just read scripts, he devoured them. He didn't just play characters, he became them. And that kind of full-throttle devotion to the craft can easily be misread in a business that often prizes efficiency over depth. Kilmer would question scenes, suggest rewrites, ask for another take. Not because he thought he was better than anyone else, but because he believed the story deserved more. It wasn't about undermining directors or stealing the spotlight. It was about staying true to the emotional core of the moment. Trejo emphasized that Kilmer's perfectionism never came with arrogance. He didn't act superior. He wasn't cruel or dismissive. He just cared more than most. That level of care can be intimidating to those who treat acting like a job instead of a calling. And in Hollywood, where time is money, that kind of intensity can ruffle feathers. But let's be clear, Kilmer's perfectionism wasn't a flaw. It was his superpower. It's what made his character so layered, so electric, so real. You don't get performances like his Doc Holliday, Jim Morrison, or Chris Shiherlis from someone who phones it in. You get them from someone who digs deep, who obsesses, who demands more from himself than anyone else ever could. Trejo wanted the world to know that Kilmer's so-called difficult nature wasn't a liability. It was the very thing that made him unforgettable. And in an industry that often praises bland professionalism over risky brilliance, Kilmer stood alone. Not as a problem, but as a force of uncompromising passion. There's a crucial detail in Danny Trejo's defense of Val Kilmer that cuts right through the media noise. Kilmer wasn't just respectful to the big names on set. He was cool with everyone. That's a powerful distinction. It's easy to be kind to the director or the lead actor. It's another thing entirely to show consistent respect to the lighting crew, the sound guys, the catering team, people who often go unacknowledged. According to Trejo, Kilmer didn't walk onto set expecting to be treated like royalty. He didn't carry himself like someone who believed he was above anyone else. In fact, he was the opposite. He paid attention. He connected. And when he did ask for another take or push a scene further, it wasn't some ego-fueled stunt. It was because he genuinely believed in the work. He wasn't delaying the shoot to flex his star power. He was inviting everyone into a shared vision of excellence. And that's something the public rarely sees. The headlines don't report when an actor treats a grip with respect. They don't spotlight when someone refuses to settle for mediocrity out of love for the project. But Trejo saw it firsthand. Kilmer's set behavior wasn't that of a diva. It was that of a man who knew what great filmmaking could be, and who never wanted to let that potential slip through his fingers. His perfectionism wasn't abrasive, it was magnetic. It inspired people. It elevated the energy of a scene. Trejo's account paints Kilmer as a quiet leader, someone who led by example rather than authority. He wasn't trying to control the set. He was trying to honor it. And that spirit, of humility, of excellence, of collaborative passion, is what defined the real Val Kilmer. The man who didn't just act in great films, but helped make them great in ways we'll never fully see on screen. Sometimes, it's the smallest stories that reveal the biggest truths. Trejo's memory of the jacket incident on the Heat set might seem trivial at first, a fleeting moment of generosity between two actors. But when you really sit with it, you realize it's so much more. Kilmer showed up to set one day wearing a striking leather jacket. Trejo, noticing it, made a casual compliment, something along the lines of "nice jacket." That could have been the end of it. For most actors, it would have been. But not for Val. The very next day, Trejo walked into his trailer and found the same exact jacket, waiting for him. A gift. No explanation, no big announcement, just a quiet gesture of appreciation. That's who Val Kilmer was. He listened, he noticed, and he gave. This wasn't about showing off or trying to win favor. It was about kindness. Pure, intentional kindness. In a town built on self-promotion, Kilmer did something radically human. He connected. Trejo didn't ask for the jacket. Kilmer wasn't obligated to give it, but he did anyway, because something in that small interaction mattered to him. That moment has stayed with Trejo all these years, not because of the jacket's price tag, but because of what it represented. Generosity without expectation. Friendship without conditions. It's a story that cuts through the myths and reveals the man underneath. Someone who didn't just play heroes or legends, but lived with empathy. In remembering Kilmer, that one jacket becomes a symbol of his true nature, quiet, thoughtful, and incredibly generous. Trejo's jacket story doesn't end with a punchline, it ends with a lump in the throat. Because in hindsight, that seemingly small moment now carries the weight of finality. That jacket, once just a cool gift, has become a keepsake, a memory frozen in time. a symbol of a friendship that now only exists in stories. And that's what makes Trejo's tribute so powerful. It's not just a defense, it's a eulogy written in moments, not monologues. That jacket now represents everything Kilmer stood for outside of the camera lens: attentiveness, thoughtfulness, humanity. In a business where relationships are often transactional, Kilmer gave without strings. He made people feel seen. Trejo didn't have to tell that story. He could have stuck to safer, broader praise. But he chose to share it because he wanted people to understand that Kilmer's generosity wasn't performative. It was instinctual. He didn't do it for attention. He did it because that's who he was. And that changes how we remember him. It adds texture to the legacy. It reminds fans that behind the roles and awards was a man who went out of his way to make someone else's day a little brighter. That act, simple as it was, now echoes louder than any tabloid headline. It stands as a quiet rebellion against the narrative of Kilmer as difficult. Trejo's voice cracks a bit when he recalls it, and that emotion tells you everything you need to know. This wasn't just a co-star. This was a man Trejo respected, admired, and ultimately mourns, not because of what Kilmer gave to the world on screen, but because of who he was when the cameras weren't rolling. To this day, one of the most glaring oversights in Hollywood history is that Val Kilmer was never nominated for an Oscar for his role as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Ask any fan, any critic with integrity, or anyone who's ever watched that film with an open heart, and they'll tell you, Kilmer didn't just play Holliday, he became him. It was eerie. It was poetic. It was the kind of performance that stays lodged in your memory for decades. And yet, no nomination, not even a nod. For Trejo and countless others, that snub wasn't just frustrating, it was infuriating. Kilmer transformed Holliday from a side character into the emotional anchor of the film. He delivered every line with venom and vulnerability, swagger and sorrow. He was dying on screen, not just from tuberculosis, but from the weight of a life soaked in regret. And you felt all of it. The cadence, the charisma, the tragedy. It was cinematic alchemy. And yet, the industry overlooked him. Why? Was it politics? Was it reputation? Was it ignorance? Trejo believes it's a combination of all three. And that's what makes it hurt even more. Kilmer gave everything to that role, and the industry shrugged. But fans didn't. They elevated Holliday to legendary status. They quoted his lines. They analyzed his every glance. And to this day, Kilmer's portrayal is considered the definitive take on the character. No golden statue can change that, but it does matter. It matters because awards aren't just symbols, they're historical markers. And Kilmer deserved to be marked as one of the greats. He didn't need validation, but he earned it. And Trejo's voice joins a chorus of others, saying what should have been said long ago. Val Kilmer gave us something transcendent. And the fact that the Oscars missed it? That's not a reflection of him. It's a reflection of them. The day Val Kilmer passed away, it wasn't just another trending headline or viral moment. It was the kind of news that stopped people in their tracks, that made timelines go quiet for a moment, that made fans, colleagues, and even critics take a breath and feel something. Because Val Kilmer wasn't just a movie star. He was different. He represented something raw, something unfiltered, something real in an industry that too often rewards the opposite. When Danny Trejo described the shockwave that followed Kilmer's death, it wasn't hyperbole. There was a collective grieving not just for the man, but for what he stood for. Kilmer wasn't part of the Hollywood machine. He didn't conform to its politics. He wasn't easy to control or box in, and that made him dangerous to some, but magnetic to those who knew better. In a world of curated images and PR-friendly personalities, Kilmer was a live wire. He chased roles that had teeth. He made choices that didn't always please studios, but they meant something. Trejo's words bring this into sharp relief. He talks not just about the man Kilmer was, but about how his loss feels like the end of an era where actors could still be rebels, still be poets in a suit of armor. Fans across the world echoed Trejo's heartbreak. They weren't just remembering a performance, they were remembering how Kilmer made them feel. And that's something no award, no review, no box office number can measure. Kilmer's art left fingerprints on people's lives. He gave voice to the broken, to the complex, to the flawed but beautiful human condition. And that's why his death wasn't just the loss of a great actor. It was the loss of a rare, defiant soul in a world increasingly obsessed with perfection and polish. Trejo's tribute wasn't just nostalgia. It was truth. And that truth hit home for anyone who ever saw themselves in one of Kilmer's haunting, unforgettable performances. There are movie quotes, and then there are lines that become legends. Val Kilmer's "I'm your huckleberry" from Tombstone belongs to the latter. It wasn't just a great line, it was iconic. It carried swagger, charm, and an undercurrent of pain all in one breath. And in the wake of Kilmer's passing, that line has taken on a whole new life. When Danny Trejo ended his tribute by saying, "We'll be your huckleberry," it wasn't just a reference, it was a final salute, a code, a shared moment of reverence among those who got it. The phrase, now echoing across fan tributes, social media posts, and even news headlines, has transformed into something sacred. It's not just about Holiday anymore. It's about Kilmer himself. It's about loyalty. It's about being there, standing by someone no matter what. That's what Trejo was doing. He wasn't just quoting a movie. He was making a promise. He was saying, "We've got you. We remember you. We honor you." And there's something deeply poetic about that. Because Kilmer, for all his larger-than-life roles, was often quietly carrying the weight of being misunderstood. But with Trejo's words, and with that single iconic line, he was brought back into the light. Not as a troubled actor, but as a hero in his own right. Fans felt it. It resonated because we've all wanted to say goodbye in a way that meant something. And for Kilmer, who gave us so many unforgettable moments, this line became the perfect send-off. Not dramatic, not overly sentimental, just perfect, just Kilmer. It closed the loop in a way that felt earned, heartfelt, and deeply cinematic. And in that moment, the tribute became something greater than itself. It became mythic, because legends don't die. They just fade into the stories we never stop telling. What Trejo's tribute ultimately delivers is something far more important than praise. It delivers clarity. For decades, Val Kilmer lived under a fog of half-truths and tabloid myths. Misunderstood, mischaracterized, reduced to a soundbite about being difficult. But Trejo didn't just push back. He offered an unflinching, emotionally grounded portrait of a man who lived and breathed for his art. Kilmer wasn't difficult, he was different. And in a world that often fears difference, he paid the price. But now, with the benefit of time, we can finally see the full picture. Kilmer wasn't the villain in some on-set drama. He was the one who cared the most. He cared enough to push harder, to dig deeper, to protect the integrity of the work when others just wanted to get through the day. That kind of energy doesn't always make you popular, but it does make you unforgettable. Trejo's tribute drives that home in a way that feels less like a statement and more like a mission, to make sure Kilmer gets the legacy he truly deserves. Not just as a great actor, but as a principled one, a fearless one who made those around him better, not because he demanded it, but because he embodied it. That's the story fans deserve to hear. That's the Kilmer they'll remember, not the caricature, but the creator, the warrior, the artist, and maybe most importantly, the friend. Trejo didn't need to share these stories, but he did, and in doing so, he helped the world rediscover something powerful. That behind every misunderstood genius is a beating heart that just wanted to be understood. Kilmer gave that heart to every role. And now, thanks to Trejo, we're finally giving it back.